there is a brutal truth that most people are too distracted to notice. We live in an era of peak comfort. We have the latest iPhones. We have high-speed internet for our digital personas. We eat out at trendy restaurants every weekend. We grab $40 avocado toasts and $5 lattes every single morning. And we fly across the country for healing trips whenever we feel a little burnt out. But there is one thing where we are far worse off than our parents. Just one thing, and it is the only thing that actually matters. The opportunity to own anything real. Back in our parents' day, if you worked hard and saved your pennies in 10 or 20 years, you owned a home, a piece of the American dream. But today, you could work 3 jobs for the rest of your life and still die in a rented apartment. There are 3 layers of chains keeping you trapped in this system. The first layer is consumerism. It makes you bleed money for things you do not need, just so you do not feel like you are falling behind your neighbors. We do not spend to live. We spend to maintain an illusion. The second layer is credit. Once you are drained dry by the brands you love, the banks step in. They hand you a plastic card and a lifetime of interest. In the near future, you will work 40 hours a week only to watch your paycheck vanish before it even hits your pocket. Rent, the car note, the phone plan, Netflix, Spotify, Amazon Prime. The debt cycle never sleeps. And the third layer, the final nail in the coffin, inflation. It is the invisible weapon that hunts down those who actually manage to save. If you think working hard and keeping cash in the bank is enough, think again. Inflation will devour your future while you sleep. So, how do we actually rise above this? Welcome to the Invisible Driver, where uncomfortable truths are quietly examined. First, let us talk about the modern plantation. When you hear the word slavery, you probably think of iron chains and brutal overseers in the scorching sun. But the modern version is much more sophisticated. It is quiet, it is clean, and it smells like expensive espresso and office floor wax. Welcome to the world of the white-collar slave. You wake up in a suburban house you do not own. You drive a car the bank still has the title to, and you spend 40 to 60 hours a week sitting in a glass box, staring at a screen just to keep the lights on. The system has convinced you that the 9 to 5 is safety. But is it? In the United States, the average worker is just one bad medical bill or one layoff away from total collapse. You are free to choose your employer. The answer is yes. But you are not free to stop working. If you stop, the illusion of your middle-class life vanishes in 30 days. Think about the culture of hustle. We wear our burnout like a badge of honor. We brag about working through the weekend. We sacrifice our physical health and our children's childhood. All for a 3% annual raise that does not even cover the increase in your grocery bill. The bitter lesson here is simple. A gilded cage is still a cage. You have the freedom to choose which brand of coffee you drink while you are being exploited. But you do not have the freedom of time. You are trading the only finite resource you possess, your life, for a currency that is being devalued while you sleep. This leads us to the second key of our modern prison. Because once they have your time, they need a way to make sure you never walk away from the desk. And that is where the most powerful psychological tool in American history comes into play. The tool that labels your worth as a human being with a 3-digit number. That 3-digit number is your FICO score. In America, this number is more than just a financial metric. It is your digital reputation. It is a leash. And for most of us, it is a set of invisible handcuffs. Think about this for a second. The system tells you that you are a free citizen. But try to rent a decent apartment in a safe neighborhood with a 600 credit score. The answer is you cannot. Try to buy a reliable car to get to that job we just talked about. The dealership will look at your score and they will either show you the door or they will bury you in an interest rate so high it feels like a second mortgage. First, you must understand how the game is rigged. To have a high credit score, you must prove that you are a good debtor. You are rewarded for being in debt. You are punished for being self-sufficient. If you pay for everything in cash and stay off the grid, the system marks you as a ghost. No history, no trust, no access. The banks have successfully turned your life into a game of points. They want you to stay in that sweet spot. Not too poor to default, but not rich enough to ever stop paying interest. They are not just managing your money. The answer is they are managing your future. They decide if you get to live in a house with a yard or a cramped studio next to the freeway. And here is the cold splash of reality. The credit score was only invented in 1989. Your grandparents lived just fine without it. But today, you are taught to obsess over it. You check your apps every morning like a religion. You worry about a 10-point drop more than you worry about your own mental health. But why are we so desperate to keep that score high? The answer is simple. Because we have been brainwashed into believing that owning things on credit is the same as being successful. This brings us to the biggest lie of the American dream, the wooden structure with a white picket fence that you think is yours. But the bank knows better. Now, let us look at the centerpiece of the American dream, the house, the white picket fence, the backyard for the kids. You have been told since birth that buying a home is your greatest investment. But the language itself tells a different story. Did you know that the word mortgage comes from Old French? It literally translates to death pledge. Mort means death. Gage means pledge. It is a commitment that only dies when you finish paying or when you do. And in today's economy, the bank is betting that you will be working until the day you die just to keep it. First, let us talk about the math they do not show you on Zillow. Imagine you buy a house for $400,000. With current interest rates over 30 years, you will not pay $400,000. The answer is you will pay closer to $900,000. You are buying one house for yourself and you are buying 1.5 houses for the bank. And even when you have the keys, do you really own it? Try not paying your property taxes for a year. Just 1 year. You will quickly realize that the government is your permanent landlord. You are just a tenant who is responsible for fixing the leaky roof and the broken furnace. In states like New Jersey or Illinois, you might pay $10,000 a year just for the right to stand on your own lawn. That is nearly $1,000 a month before you even buy a loaf of bread. The bitter lesson is this. A home is a liability that masquerades as an asset. It locks you into a specific zip code. It makes you afraid to quit the job you hate because the death pledge is due on the 1st of the month. You are not a homeowner. You are a caretaker for a bank asset. But why do we do it? Why do we sign these 30-year sentences so willingly? The answer is because we are being manipulated by a digital mirror, a mirror that tells us we are not successful unless we show it off to the world. And that leads us to the most addictive trap of all. Now, let us talk about the invisible architect of your poverty. The smartphone in your hand. Inside that device, thousands of the world's smartest engineers are working around the clock with one single goal. To make you feel inadequate. Every time you open Instagram or TikTok, the algorithm feeds you a curated lie. You see your high school friend on a private beach in Bali. You see an influencer unboxing a bag that costs more than your monthly rent. And you see that neighbor who just bought the latest Tesla. First, you need to understand the biology of this trap. Your brain releases a hit of dopamine every time you imagine yourself in their shoes. But that high is followed by a crushing low, a feeling of being left behind. The system calls this lifestyle inspiration. The answer is that it is actually psychological warfare. In America, we are suffering from a plague of comparison. We no longer compete with the people on our street. We compete with the top 1% of the entire planet. You feel the urge to upgrade your phone not because the old one is broken, but because your digital identity feels poor without the 3 camera lenses. You buy clothes you do not wear to impress people you do not like. You put a $5,000 vacation on a credit card just for the photos. You are burning your real life to maintain a digital ghost. The lesson is simple but heavy. The things you own end up owning you. If your self-worth is tied to the brand on your chest or the car in your driveway, then you are the easiest person in the world to control. You are a puppet, and the algorithm is pulling the strings by making you crave things you cannot afford. But here is the kicker. Even if you are smart enough to stop scrolling, even if you decide to save every penny and live a quiet life, the system has a final boss waiting for you. A silent thief that enters your house and steals your wealth while you are sleeping. It does not care about your discipline. It does not care about your hard work. And that brings us to the most misunderstood force in the financial world. Now, let us talk about the silent thief. Most people call it inflation. They think it is just a natural phenomenon like the weather or the tides. The answer is no. Inflation is a policy, and it is governed by something called the Cantillon effect. Imagine a giant waterfall of money. At the very top, standing right under the faucet, are the big banks, the government, and the elite hedge funds. When the central bank prints trillions of dollars, these people get the money first. And here is the trick. They get to spend that fresh money while prices are still low. They buy up the real estate, they buy the stocks, they buy the gold. By the time that money trickles down to you in the form of a small stimulus check or a tiny raise, the damage is already done. The massive spending at the top has already pushed prices into the stratosphere. Look at the reality of 2026. Go to your local grocery store. A carton of eggs and a gallon of milk now feel like luxury purchases. You are working the same hours. You are doing the same job, but your paycheck is shrinking every single day in real time. While you were sleeping, the government decided to tax your savings without ever sending you a bill. They did it by devaluing the dollar in your pocket. The bitter lesson is this. In a world of infinite money, printing cash is trash. If you are the person who plays by the old rules, if you work hard and keep your money in a traditional savings account, you are the primary victim. You are essentially running a race where the finish line is being moved 10 feet back every time you take a step. The rich do not hold cash. The answer is they hold assets. They hold things that the government cannot print out of thin air. But most of us are too busy running the race to notice we are on a treadmill. We are trapped in a loop, working harder to buy less. And that brings us to the mechanics of the game itself. The cycle that keeps you exhausted and compliant. Now, why is it that no matter how much you earn, it never feels like enough? The answer is a psychological trap called lifestyle creep. The system is designed to make sure that as your income rises, your expenses rise even faster. Let us look at a typical American success story. Imagine a professional in Dallas or Charlotte earning $100,000 a year. In most of the world, that is a king's ransom. But in the US, that person is often living paycheck to paycheck. First, they get the raise. Then, they upgrade the apartment to a luxury high-rise. They trade the reliable Toyota for a leased German SUV. They start shopping at Whole Foods instead of the local market. And suddenly that six-figure salary is being swallowed by a six-figure lifestyle. They are not building wealth. The answer is they are just building a more expensive prison. They are running faster and faster on a treadmill just to stay in the same place. They have the title, they have the fancy zip code, but they have zero freedom. If they miss 2 months of work, the whole house of cards collapses. Ask yourself this: who really owns your life? Is it you? Or is it the boss you despise, the bank that owns your car, and the credit card company that funded your last vacation? If you have to ask permission to see your doctor or to attend your child's school play, you are not successful. You are just a high-priced servant. The lesson here is that wealth is not about how much money you make. Wealth is about how much time you own. Money can be printed. Time cannot. Most people spend their lives trading a non-renewable resource. Their time for a renewable one. Paper money, that is a bad trade. But the system does not want you to have time. Because a person with time is a person who can think. And a person who thinks is a person who can see through the illusions. To keep you on the treadmill, the system has built a massive safety net. But as we are about to see, this net is not there to catch you when you fall. It is there to keep you tangled. Number 7, the social safety net illusion. Now, let us peel back the final layer of the American lie, the safety net. You are told that we have the best education and the best healthcare in the world. The answer is, that may be true for the elite, but for you, these systems are designed to be a financial quicksand. Let us start with the student loan trap. You are told at 18 that you must borrow $60,000 to get a degree. You are told it is an investment in yourself. But the moment you graduate, that debt becomes a ball and chain that you cannot escape even through bankruptcy. The system does not want you to be a philosopher or a creator. The answer is it wants you to be a compliant employee who is too afraid of his monthly loan payment to ever say no to his boss. And then, there is the healthcare system. In the United States, health insurance is tied to your job. This is not by accident. It is the ultimate control mechanism. If you hate your career, if you want to start your own business, if you want to take a year off to travel, you cannot, because you are terrified that one broken leg or one unexpected diagnosis will bankrupt your entire family. The system keeps you just well enough to work and just broke enough to never leave. The enemy here is not a person. It is the institutionalized dependency. They want you dependent on the corporate structure for your physical survival. They want you to view your cubicle as your life support machine. As long as you are scared of losing your benefits, you are a prisoner who polices himself. The lesson is this: a system that profits from your debt and your sickness will never find a cure for either. Real security does not come from a government program or a corporate HR department. Real security comes from being so financially sovereign that you do not need their net to survive. But as dark as this sounds, there is something even more calculated happening behind the scenes. The system is not just stagnant, it is predatory. Every decade or so, the people at the top decide it is time to harvest. And if you do not understand the cycle, you are the crop. Now, we need to talk about the harvest. In the financial world, we call this the economic cycle. But for the people at the top, it is simply a scheduled transfer of wealth from your pocket to theirs. Every 10 years or so, the bubble gets too big. The stock market looks like a mountain peak. The housing market feels untouchable. And just when the average American feels confident enough to buy at the top, the rug is pulled. First, you must understand how they do it. they raise the interest rates. The easy money vanishes. Suddenly, people who are over-leveraged start to panic. They lose their jobs. They cannot pay the mortgage on that house we talked about. They sell their stocks at a massive loss because they need cash to survive. And who is waiting on the other side of that panic? The answer is the big banks and the private equity firms. While you are watching your 401k bleed out, they are sitting on mountains of cash, waiting to buy your life for 20 cents on the dollar. They bought the foreclosed homes in 2008. They bought the tech stocks in 2020. And they are doing it again right now in 2026. This is the great wealth transfer. It is a game where the house always wins because the house owns the deck. The masses buy when things are expensive because of FOMO. The masses sell when things are cheap because of fear. The elite do the exact opposite. The lesson here is brutal. If you follow the crowd, you will be slaughtered with the crowd. Most people are taught to be fearful when the market is red. But that is exactly when the wealthy are the most greedy. To survive this, you have to stop thinking like a consumer and start thinking like a predator. You have to build your own pool of capital, so that when the next crisis hits, you are the one buying, not the one being sold. But how do you build that capital when the system is designed to keep you broke? How do you stop being the prey and start being the one who controls the board? The answer is not found in a cubicle. It is found in building a fortress that the banks cannot touch. Now, we have spent enough time looking at the bars of the cage. It is time to talk about the key. If you want to survive the next decade, you cannot just be a worker. You must become a fortress. The first stone in your fortress is cash flow, not a salary. Cash flow. In America, a single source of income is a single point of failure. You need to develop what I call high leverage skills. Skills that the system cannot automate and the banks cannot tax out of existence. Code, content, digital sales, consulting. These are your borderless weapons. They allow you to earn in a strong currency while living wherever you choose. The second stone is low consumption. I am not telling you to be cheap. I am telling you to be strategic. The system wants you to buy a new truck the moment you get a raise. Don't do it. Drive the old car until the doors fall off. Live in a modest house even when you can afford a mansion. Every dollar you do not give to a brand or a bank is a soldier fighting for your freedom. When you lower your cost of living, you lower the power that your boss has over your life. The third stone is hard assets. Stop saving paper. The government can print paper until it is worthless. They cannot print more land. They cannot print more gold. They cannot print more Bitcoin. You must move your labor from a melting ice cube, the US dollar, into a permanent container. This is how you protect your time across generations. The lesson is this. Real freedom is the ability to say no. No to the promotion that steals your soul. No to the toxic work environment. No to the debt-fueled lifestyle. When you have a fortress of assets and multiple streams of income, you are no longer a victim of the system. You are a participant by choice. But waking up is only half the battle. Knowing the truth is a burden if you do not act on it. We are reaching the end of our journey today, and I have one final question for you. The one that will determine exactly where you will be 5 years from now. So, here we are. You have seen the chains, you have seen the invisible overseers, and you have seen the exit sign. The question is, Guru, now that you know the truth, what are you going to do when this audio stops? Most of you will do nothing. The answer is you will go back to your scrolling. You will tell yourself that you will start your side business next month. You will tell yourself that the next iPhone is just a small treat for your hard work. And in 5 years, you will be in the exact same spot, only older, tireder, and deeper in debt. The system counts on your laziness. It counts on your desire for comfort. But for the few of you who are actually listening, the ones who feel that fire in their chest, your mission starts today. First, stop being a victim. Take full responsibility for your financial survival. Cut the expenses that do not add real value to your life. Start learning that high-leverage skill tonight. Buy your first fraction of a hard asset before the week is over. The answer is that nobody is coming to save you, not the government, not the banks. Only you can build your fortress. The era of the mindless consumer is ending. The era of the sovereign individual is just beginning. Choose which one you want to be. This has been The Invisible Driver, where uncomfortable truths are quietly examined. If you are ready to stop being a gear in their machine, stay tuned for our next session. Until then, keep your eyes open and your mind sharp. Goodbye.